The world of clans and clans, Tarkir, was a plane of constant struggle, one which had long ago rid itself of the threat of the dragon broods. But when the planeswalker Sarkhan returned to his home, his journey took him to the distant past of Tarkir, and his actions there changed the very fate of the world. Tarkir remained a place of conflict, only now the people of the world are subservient to the dragon broods and the 5 dragon lords. The Tarkir block represents a unique moment in Magic the Gathering's history, showcasing a world that could go down one of 2 different paths based on the choices made in the past. Khans of Tarkir and Dragons of Tarkir are both very interesting, flavorful sets, but both are merely a product of Fate Reforged, a set that takes us into the history of the plane and offers the player the opportunity to help shape the fate of the world. But before we can discuss Fate Reforged, let's talk about the first set of the block, Khans of Tarkir. In this set, we journey to Sarkhan's homeworld while he chases the voices plaguing his mind. The Tarkir we're introduced to may be one of the most interesting worlds Wizards of the Coast has ever created. A world of conflict, certainly, but also a world of life. We learn that, on Tarkir, dragons have been extinct for a long time. In the modern day, the 5 clans and their khans have risen to supremacy, each one representing a different aspect of the ancient dragons. These groups are all distinctive and easy to identify, not just visually but mechanically as well, with each clan possessing their own distinct look and keywords associated with them. The Abzan Houses, a tight-knit community that embodies the dragon's endurance, use the Outlast mechanic to empower one another, working together to fortify themselves against danger. The Jeskai Way is an order of monks and mystics representing the dragon's cunning, and they use the prowess mechanic to catch enemies off guard. The Temur Frontier is a loose coalition of fierce survivalists, embodying the dragon's savagery. Their mechanic, Ferocious, helps them in overpowering anything they encounter. The Mardu Horde is a band of warriors that frequently raid other clans for resources. Representing the speed of the dragon, the Mardu utilize the raid mechanic to gain an extra edge after an attack. And the decadent Sultai Brood represent the dragon's ruthlessness, with their mechanic, Delve, showing how nothing, not even the dead, are off limits as a resource to them. Each of these factions received an exhaustive amount of lore explaining their history, customs, hierarchy, what kind of magic they use, and, of course, how they interact with one another. While the players were growing accustomed to Tarkir's world and mechanics through the cards, the story was on the move as well. Tarkir's storyline follows Sarkhan on his search for answers, a journey that sees him travel across Tarkir, following whispers in his mind and hints of a different past. On his journey, Sarkhan encounters friend and foe alike, and eventually makes his way to the resting place of Ugin's bones. Here, at the very site the spirit dragon died, Sarkhan finds himself overwhelmed by temporal energies and is transported through time to the distant past, 1100 years ago. The Fate Reforged story sees Sarkhan's experience with the Tarkir of the past, A Tarkir filled with dragons, those powerful, majestic creatures Sarkhan worshipped so fervently. Here, we learn of the dragon tempests, great storms caused by Ugin himself that spawned dragons into being. Of the dragons of Tarkir's past, 5 are of particular note, each one commanding entire broods of lesser dragons. Dramoka, Ojutai, Atarka, Kalagan, and Silumgar compete not only with one another, but against the Khans and their clans for supremacy over Tarkir. We also meet the Khans of the distant past and learn of the daily struggle for survival the clans endure. But most importantly, we follow Sarkhan to the most important battle Tarkir will ever know. Nicol Bolas, Ugin's twin brother, had come to Tarkir to slay his sibling. In an apocalyptic battle between 2 elder dragon planeswalkers, Bolas ultimately emerged victorious, slaying Ugin and leaving his corpse to rot in a canyon. Or at least, that is how history initially transpired, but Sarkhan Vol intervened, saving Ugin's life before being pulled forward in time. In Dragons of Tarkir, we return to the Tarkir of the present to find it a very different world from when we left. Thanks to Ugin's survival, the dragon tempests never ceased, and the dragons never died out. Over time, the 5 great dragons became dragon lords, each supplanting and ruling over the clans we had known. These 5 elder dragons rule Tarkir with an iron fist. Under their rule, history is erased, all mention of Khans is forbidden, and acknowledging your own culture is punishable by death. The Abzan houses have been completely dissolved and their culture suppressed. They now serve under the Dragon Lord Dramoka, who sees to it that the people have no identity other than their service to her. The wisdom and history of the Jeskai has been erased, replaced by the new history and teachings of Ojutai, who slays anyone foolish enough to seek the truth of Tarkir's past. The Temur have been reduced to a horde of starving scavengers, scouring the wilds for more food to feed an ever-hungry Atarka, who has no qualms about making her human servants her next meal. The Mardu are no longer proud warriors or skilled raiders. Instead, they are little more than a roving band of savages and cannibals, serving as a blunt army under Kalagan's rule. And the decadence of the Sultai has turned into the decadence of Silumgar, who lays on a mountain of the former clan's treasure and gladly slays those who oppose him, knowing that he can simply revive them as undead slaves. The Tarkir of Dragons is one where the people are enslaved under the Dragon Lords that could have just as easily been wiped out by the Khans of the past. But thanks to a single choice, one made so long ago, it is the dragons, not the Khans, that rule Tarkir. Fate Reforged is a set that offers players a rare chance to view the crossroads in a plane's history, where events could play out in different ways. Sure, there have been times in Magic's history where things could have played out differently. Wizards teased that the scars of Mirrodin Block could have ended in Mirrodin Pure or New Phyrexia, for instance. But this is so far the only time in the game's history that we can see both possibilities playing out. Khans of Tarkir block is unique, as the 3 sets in it were not intended to all be drafted together. Instead, Fate Reforged was meant to be drafted with either of the 2 larger sets, illustrating how Khans of Tarkir and Dragons of Tarkir represent 2 separate timelines that branch from one point. If one were to summarize Fate Reforged in a single word, choice would be a good option. The set's mechanics, flavor, and story all revolve around the concept of choice. When Sarkhan Vol chose to save Ugin's life, he forever altered the history of Tarkir. In a similar fashion, the players are given a choice over which faction to side with. The siege cycle best illustrates this, having all been designed around this concept. Each of these enchantments has you choose a side when they come into play, Khans or Dragons, and the bonus they provide is different depending on your choice. But the card that best represents this concept is Crux of Fate, a sorcery that shows off the very moment that Tarkir's future is decided. With it, you, the player, can choose who becomes dominant, the Khans of Tarkir, or its dragons. Another theme that can be found in the set is potential. This set illustrates well the possibility the clans have for growth, with all of the cards representing the Khans being monocolored, but with abilities that grant them greater power if they gain access to the colors that would be associated with their clans in the future. The inverse, however, is true of the dragons. The legendary dragons in this set do not have some hidden potential, and if you look at their future versions in Dragons of Tarkir, you'll see that they really don't change much. In fact, in this timeline, the Dragon Lords are rather regressive, stifling the growth of the clans by removing one of their possible colors and snuffing out their culture. Finally, while it's not a major theme in the set, the concept of factions is strongly represented here as well. Fate Reforged is one of the few sets in the game where colors compete not only against one another, but against themselves, with watermarks being used to help identify which faction any given card belongs to. Any random blue card, for instance, could belong to the Jeskai, the Sultai, the Temur, or Ojatai's dragons, giving a wide range of allegiances for players to choose from. All of these themes, combined with the mechanics and story of the set, help to make Fate Reforged one of the most flavorful and memorable sets in the game's history. There's so much that could be said in regards to Fate Reforged. It's a unique experience, both in terms of gameplay and story, and it's not one that I think Wizards of the Coast will ever replicate. There's so many cool things about this set that I think are kind of glossed over. For example, did you know that the common land cycle in Fate Reforged is the same as in Khans of Tarkir, except that here, the lands all have different art showing the Tarkir of the past. During the Fate Reforged pre-release, players could win a special Ugin's Fate pack, within which a selection of cards from Khans of Tarkir and Fate Reforged show up with different art, showcasing a Tarkir where Ugin survives. The Tarkir block was my first real Magic block, and it may just be one of my favorites. It seems I'm not alone either, with many players voicing a love of Tarkir and its clans. The concept of Fate Reforged, a journey to the past with the fate of the world at stake, was very tantalizing, and I can say I thoroughly enjoyed it. Unfortunately, Only one of the timelines could stick, and we're left today with a Tarkir ruled by dragons and not much else. I and many other players have bemoaned the sad state Tarkir was left in by the end of the story, and Wizards seems to have taken the hint. I don't think a do-over of Fate Reforged is on the table, but at the same time, something tells me the Dragon Lords won't be in power forever. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, go ahead and play Flip It or Rip It with some Fate Reforged packs, and don't forget to like the video and leave a comment below. If you want to stay up to date with the channel, then hit the subscribe button and destroy that bell to be alerted whenever I upload new videos. Finally, this video was brought to you by my patrons. My patrons get early access to all of my lore videos, and I genuinely appreciate their support. Thanks again, and have a great day.